Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Important.
Important. Yes, I met you.
And I just remembered many great conversations.
Restored River table out in front of the. Yeah, right.
I just asked Audra, I'm like, which one is yours now? Because I'm nervous.
Yeah.
But we did tell them that it's
I've
gotten an extra shot.
So yeah, you never.
I just got mine 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay, so.
So if I pass out or something like that, you know.
It's 10. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Would you ever?
Well,
Yeah.
scheduled for this one after plenty of time.
If you
It's
take
like
out.
20 or 4.
Think about
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Enjoy your evening.
Yes.
Well, whatever you want to
It just. Pull this stuff.
Well, this one's-
And I heard from most of them,
They're both coming.
that they're both coming. So,
You're hanging out with us?
So this is.
Oh, I was gonna take it off.
This is live stream right now.
Yeah, you guys don't need me, I was just.
See, I just heard that.
Okay, so.
It's amazing. It like highlights it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Actually, it's been great. We went to the neurologist
Yeah.
yesterday
Yeah.
and they said it looks like he's getting through it unscathed, so. Yeah.
Yeah.
en route, as we say. It'll be a French-English meeting. So my name is Sophie Romana. I'm elected on the select board of Camden, and I'm also the chair of this advisory committee. And I'm super delighted to welcome all of you here today. Very excited that we're going to start working on this massive project, and extremely thankful that you all agreed to serve and to help us think through this project and work on the river together. So I know it's hard to find volunteers who want to commit to something that big and important. So I really want you to know that I appreciate your time and the select board appreciate your time. And I hope the whole town of Camden appreciates your time as well, because they sure do. And they need to. We're going to start this first meeting by a quick tour of introduction, because we don't know each other very well. And I'm going to ask Maggie and Forrest to start, because they're the representative from FBE, the consultants we've hired with that technical expertise to help us through this process of the working on the river, a project that has become even more important in light of the recent grant we just got. And we were just working through the grant steps with Maggie and Forrest earlier this afternoon. And I am very excited that because of this grant, we're going to have enough funding and budget to have this advisory committee work for at least 2 years. So buckle up.
Great. Thanks, Sophie. And yeah, when we finish going around the room, if you all can give kind of an introduction plus, for maybe 30 seconds or a minute, a little bit about your background and maybe your connection to the Megunticook River. I know some of you emailed that when you applied, and that would be great to hear. So Forrest Bell, I'm the owner and founder of FB Environmental. I grew up in Mid-Coast, Maine. I grew up in a little town called Whitefield and went to Lincoln Academy, Damascata. We used to come to Camden and lose in wrestling, lose in basketball. So, know this area quite well. I've been doing water resources work for 32 years or so, 21 years as the owner of the company, and get to work all throughout New England, and not too many other areas, but mostly in New England. So one of the things we can do and we can help bring to the table is different perspectives from what we've seen work well in other communities, not work well in other communities, how different, water bodies and watersheds look and things of that sort. So that's kind of what I'm doing. That's to Maggie.
Awesome. Yeah, nice to meet you all. I'm Maggie Mills. I work for Forrest at FB Environmental as a watershed hydrologist. I kind of lead our watershed management, community planning divisions. My background is really in water resource science, and but through my role at this company, have really enjoyed working with communities on incorporating natural resources into planning and kind of working through that process. I'm from Maine. I did my undergrad at University of Maine and did some schooling out west in Boulder. And yeah, I most of the projects I work on are in Maine, and they're really fun, and we get to go to a lot of really beautiful places like this one. So that's the one.
My name is Elfie Owen. I'm a teacher at the middle school where I've been for, I think it's 19 years now. I live on Knowlton Street. And so I've had an interest in the river for a long time as a neighbor. But I also come here as a board member of the Stewardship Education Alliance, which is a group of people that are seeking to educate people about being better stewards of the watershed. So certainly on our board, we decided somebody needed to be present here. So I raised my hand and here I am. Yeah, so I've lived here for 23 years in Camden, and so.
My name is Susan Todd, and I've been in Camden since 2001, so 22 years, very similar to you.
which is almost half of the extant land trusts in Maine these days. I've also been on planning boards, both in Maine and in Vermont, and on conservation commissions, and currently on the zoning board in Maine. So it's a variety of connections, but the passion about outdoor areas and especially watercourts has been important to me as long as I can remember.
I'm Courtney Cease. I moved here 6 years ago.
I think you need to speak a bit louder.
yes.
So we're live, broadcasting live through Zoom. So be mindful that some people might be listening in. I have no idea if we have any
One
attendees,
person left.
but it also will be recorded
One person.
for posterity. So and Suzanne, and then when you speak, maybe remove your mask because it could be a bit muffled.
Okay. I'll start here. I'm Courtney Cease. Moved here 6 years ago. I grew up in Massachusetts and went to school at Colby College here in Maine, and moved around a lot for work and study. But Camden has always been the constant in my life because my grandmother moved here in the 1930s with her brother to run an inn, and so and my parents retired here about 16 years ago. Some of you know. And so I came up here, spent a lot of time in Penobscot Bay and in the Lake Megunticook and the mountains, and it's my happy place. So I'm really happy to be back here and to put some more roots down. My background is in climate solutions and international sustainable development. I have a degree in environmental policy and a master's in international sustainable development, the focus on environment and climate. So I've worked on projects around the world, but mainly was in DC, working at the World Bank and at the State Department, where I was working on climate change projects. So I'm hoping that some of that experience I can bring to the table, since I think what we're doing here is really sustainable development. We're working to figure out the needs of the community, while also ensuring that the natural environment can thrive and can provide suitable ecosystem services for us. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm excited to learn more. I've been working with a group called Restore Megunticook in town that's focused on the river restoration project. And I've been working with them for about a year, so I've learned a lot, but ready for more perspectives and to gain more insight.
Hello, my name's Tyler Smith. I grew up in Camden, just on the river right across from Shirttail. So Seabright Dam was kind of my playground growing up. My parents moved to the lake, Megunticook Lake, when I was just entering University of Maine for engineering school. I now live on C Street, so I get the other end, the output end now of the Megunticook River. I am an engineer by trade. I worked for Boeing for 10 years in Seattle before I moved back here. And around here, I do engineering stuff. I do hold a PE in Maine and Washington State and West Coast places. Also, my family and myself own businesses that are along the watershed and in downtown Camden.
I'm Ray Andresen. My wife and I moved here from Connecticut back in 2006, so we've been coming here on vacation since 1986. And one of the things I found about Camden moving here is just how easy and rewarding it was to get involved with committees like this. And I'm retired from General Electric, where I was manager in the public relations department, basically responsible for the annual report, but some other publications. And since coming here, I am now currently the president of Mary Spring Nature Center. I've been involved with the Camden Hills Coastal Mountains Land Trust. I was on the cannery site work group. I've been the chair of the Camden Parks and Rec Committee. Have been involved with several other committees growing out of that for studying the Snow Bowl. Unlike I think a lot of members here, I really don't have any scientific background. And then for full disclosure, I'm a member of the Save the Dam Falls Committee.
Hi, my name is Ellen Reynolds. I moved to Maine 13 years ago. My husband and I own Drift Oceanside Inn here in Camden. And even though the paperwork here says that I'm the executive director of Children's House Montessori School, I actually just resigned from that position at the beginning of the school year. I worked for them for the last 2 years and was on the board before that. My education background is I have an undergraduate degree from the University of North Carolina in environmental science and marine ecology, as well as a master's degree from Maine Maritime Academy in international logistics management. The majority of my work up to now has been for NOAA. I have worked as a fisheries biologist. I am a nationally certified biologist with NOAA, having worked in the Bering Sea and the Gulf of Alaska and the North Pacific and the North Atlantic. So most of my scientific background is with marine fisheries, but a lot of the work that I did at UNC was in partnership with Duke University, looking at human impact on coastal ecosystems. Before that, I midway through college took a break and joined AmeriCorps, and did that for a year, traveling around volunteering around the United States, and primarily worked for the Nature Conservancy through them as a wildland firefighter, which really sort of birthed my love for all things science and nature and ecosystems. So I'm thankful to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm Seth Taylor. I'm a Rockport resident, and I live in Deb's old house in Rockport. We're still forwarding all sorts of mail that proves how committed and active Deb's always been. So just standing on the shoulders of giants. But I'm a manager at Maine Sport, and that means that I kind of like buy stuff for the fishing department because that's my area of expertise. I'm a registered Maine guide. And have been since 1996. But as soon as I got my guide's license, that was one of my careers at Maine Sport Outfitters. I moved out to Seattle too, where I really cut my teeth in my industry and just kind of deepened all my interests in everything outdoors. And I really kind of chose retail at that time as a way to make a difference in the environment that was tangible, and that I could take people in there fishing and turn them into good stewards and conservationists in the process. And it has to get there because everybody gets tired of all the maiming of wildlife and the pursuit of our happy on the water. So that's been kind of like a nice way to do it. I studied philosophy at the University of Maine at Orono, and so that's my background in thinking that I can help people on their journey, but I'm really a retail guy. And so the ups and downs of the retail world and the busyness of it in the last few years, especially where everybody has carved out more time in their lives for their outdoor passions, has just been, well, there's nothing quite like it. But I've done other careers, and if I think about like raising money for great private liberal arts school like a Wellesley College, you know, Maine Sport is kind of in that league now in terms of just being like big and serious and awesome, totally consuming. So I still guide. The river is definitely a big part of where we take people fishing, and it can only be a bigger part. And it is, of course, the lifeblood of the estuary, where I take people fishing for stripers out in Camden Harbor and around the area. So this is just a very important project to be involved in, full stop. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Richard?
Yes. Sorry, I'm late. I got lost in the green room behind the stage. Glad to know it's there. I'm Richard Thackeray. I am a Camden resident, live on Belmont, and let's see, let me read what it says here, see if this is all right. I am an attorney. I work for DHHS, and I serve everyone here except you. I think I do represent you on the school board as well. So
You do represent
don't
it.
pick on me. Yes, that's right. School boards, actually, high school and K-8. And as it says, I've been involved with a number of local nonprofits and know about half the folks in this room, some of whom I've served with on those boards with. So in any case, happy to be involved and looking forward to the work.
Great. This is a good group. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I'm going to turn it over to you for a presentation of FB Environment. I'm going to shave 5 minutes of your schedule
Perfect.
because we're just a little bit behind schedule, so 15
Perfect.
minutes instead of 20.
I don't think we may not even need 15, so that's.
And do you want people to ask questions as you go or keep them at the end of your presentation? And there's no PowerPoint. We're going to try to keep it, no acronyms, because I am completely acronym phobic because I don't understand them. And this is, we need to work together. So I want the conversation to be fluid, and if you have questions, pop them up. Let's make it more, like a group of people who are going to be together for 2 years. And maybe less if I'm not really like this. That's another topic. But anyway, you see what I mean.
Yeah, that sounds great. And yeah, I agree. I think asking questions as Maggie and I go through a few things is fine. I think we didn't really set ground rules, but I think just raising our hand is the one real ground rule we need. And, Sophie can call on people and say, you're next and you're next. So anyways, I think this is pretty informal. We don't have a PowerPoint. I did present a PowerPoint kind of on the background of our company about a month or so ago to the select board. So you can find that online on the great Town of Camden website. But I just wanted to kind of introduce our work a little bit and our role and maybe answer some questions. I'll preface that by saying, we're the new kids in town, right? So we've been, officially working on the project only, a little under 2 months so far. I'll admit that I've been paying attention for more like 6 months, to what's been happening, and have learned a lot in the process, but frankly, still have a lot to learn. And I think the role of this advisory committee is to be a learning group, to really learn from each other and, learn from some outside people that we can bring in as well. If there's a controversial topic or we need to learn more about the fishery or whatever it may be. So anyway, we were, FB Environmental was hired by the town, a couple months ago, as I mentioned. And really the first part of our project is, it's going to be done in 2 months or so. It's really to put the advisory committee together. And I feel really good after hearing everyone's introductions, what a great group we have and a really good cross section. So that's great to see. And then, help with our first 3 meetings or so. And then the second part of our project, so we have a $19,000 project we're working under for the town right now that's paying for our time here today. Another part of the project is called a gap analysis. And we're gonna go into more detail about that in the next meeting. And actually we'll have something to present. I think you'll find it very interesting. I hope you do, but I'm just going to flip it to Maggie just for a minute to kind of explain what a gap analysis is and kind of what we're in the process of looking at. So this is a task in our project for the town.
Yeah, so everybody has a packet in front of them that Forrest put together. So agenda, and then you're likely familiar with this second paper, which is the letter from Forrest to the board with everyone's name in it. And then in the back here, we have just a watershed map that can hopefully help orient you to looking at this project from, oh, hold on, someone's in the waiting room. There we go. That can help, look at this project in the context of the full watershed. But then on the next page, we just put together this brief, 1-page summary of what we've been charged to do through this gap analysis task. And basically in this first phase, as Forrest said, we're coming in and we're learning. And part of what we want to do and help provide to this group, hopefully, is just some organization of what exists, whether it be raw data, plans, reports, feasibility studies, kind of looking at a cross section, not just looking at the scientific data, like the water quality and data, the flood observations, et cetera, but also thinking about things like land use, kind of like social impact, historic value, et cetera. So trying to be as comprehensive as we can about, what has been done under this project generally to date, what formats it's in, who did it, putting that into a database that hopefully this committee can help us review and make sure is comprehensive, because you all are representing the knowledge of the town and bringing that to us. So I think what's important here, we've highlighted in blue, and this is really, as Forrest mentioned, just this this is this kickoff phase. We're just really jumping in. And so the gap analysis as it's outlined, it's really just like a presence absence, like what exists, what format it's in, here's a link to it, here's an organizational Dropbox or OneDrive or whatever we all decide is the best way to do that, that organizes it for us so that we can find it. So it's just presence absence. We're not getting into synthesizing data in this phase. We're not going to come back with, a synthesis on what historical flood observations are, what water quality is. So that's really in addition to forming this committee and getting this steering committee group ready, it's the meat of this first kickoff phase.
That is a question.
Maggie,
Yes.
can you the slash here between presence and absence,
Oh, yes.
you're gonna tell us what data is there.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
also gonna tell us what's not.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be sure.
Yes. So the idea is to work together to kind of look at the town's goal and mission statement related to this project, which could be a conversation in of itself here. And outline what's present, put a database together, and then outline the gaps in it and what we think needs to be done from our perspective and from the committee's perspective.
I think a key point is also understanding what kind of information do we need to gather or create, so that the people in Camden have a better understanding of the issues around the river and how to tackle them. Right, have a little.
Not exactly true. Yeah.
Good.
Anything to add on that?
Well, I'll just add one piece that many of you, know about if you've been following along with the select board meetings, is that we recognized a pretty obvious gap very early on in the process, which is the first bullet, water quality data and reporting. So as watershed scientists, one of the first things we like to look at is, what is the water chemistry and and biology or the ecology of the river, what are the measurements for that? What measurements are out there that can help us understand, how healthy the Megunticook River is? And there, I contacted some colleagues at the Maine Department of Environmental Protection, and there really wasn't much data, almost nothing since 2011 related to oxygen, temperature, basic chemistry, nutrients. There's been some bacteria monitoring that's happened, especially in the last 2 or 3 years ago. So long story short, we made a proposal to the town and to get data loggers into the river at 7 sites, which was approved, and the data loggers are already in the river. And these data loggers are about yay big. They look like small torpedoes. We can bring one in someday when we share some of the data. And they're continuously monitoring dissolved oxygen and temperature at these 7 sites. I think probably every 15 minutes we usually set them for. And this was really important, and we wanted to get them in during the warm time of year when the water level is low. That's a critical period to measure rivers. So we're pretty pleased that the data loggers are in there, and potentially the monitoring can be expanded in future years. But this was really hey, what's happening with the Megunticook River? How are these dissolved oxygen levels, and what are the temperatures looking like? Yes, right.
Just a quick question. Can you
Sure.
tell us where those 7 sites are?
I
Even, I think most of us know the river. So.
Yeah, I could we can send a map. We just put together a map about a week ago, but there, you know,
Is there a site in the lake itself, or are we just talking about the river?
there is a site just above the east and west dams.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
that's the highest
Yeah.
site, and the lowest site is we actually have a logger, and I didn't go out there that day, my staff did, but it's actually fixed onto the Montgomery Dam right there. That's the lowest one, and then there's 5 in between.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Forrest, will those 7 stay in the same place or will they move around during that test period?
I think they'll probably stay in the same place. My staff did a lot of work in locating the sites, and you know, there's multiple reasons they chose the sites, the depth of the water, access, things of that sort. And I think some of those are historical sites that have been monitored before. I have to double check on that, but there were some sites that have been established by the state back in 2011. So we tried to, you know, so there's some data to compare to. But it's exciting and interesting because the technology has advanced so far from, say, 2011, when you used to take a water sample by, you know, dipping a bottle into the river. You still do that, but this is, you know, again, continuous data. So we'll know what happens in warm weather, cool weather, nighttime, daytime, during the storm, after a storm, before a storm. So we will share that at future meetings. Right now, we're monitoring in September and all through the end of October is the plan right now. So I'm going to go over my allotted time, but
That's okay.
I will just, the other piece, you know, I wanted to mention, because as part of our project, is we're going to spend a little bit of time helping to get this, what's called NIFWIF, that's an acronym, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant, help it get off the ground. And we're just starting that process right now. And as many of you probably know, there's a $1.6 million award that was made by this foundation to the town of Camden. And I won't go into all the details, but this will definitely be something we'll discuss over time. And I did send you the link on the town website to this 8-page document. And there's more documents like the schedule that I'm just sort of starting to find. So we will share all these as well.
Yeah, or we'll share more digestible ones, because these can be pretty hard to break down, and we're also still working on them. So I think the idea is to have more of a timeline of the project, but we'll see what makes sense. It's a big deal that 1.6 million granted. We competed against very large cities in the US, and the fact that the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation it chose us is really significant in terms of what we could potentially achieve in addressing the Megunticook River watershed. So I personally want to have a kickoff party for this grant. You know, it's so much money to help us understand, explore, ask questions, poke different hypotheses, and try to come up with the best solution for the river, for the people who live in Camden and on the watershed and the wildlife. So it's super exciting to get such an opportunity to do this in Camden. We could become a poster city on how we decide collectively, the community, how to handle the river, how to manage it, care for it, and use it. So it's a super exciting time. What's next on our agenda? By the way, I tested negative for COVID, so I'm sorry. It's the end of a little cold, so do not be alarmed. And I have 4 boosters, and I'm right behind Ray getting my 5th one, so I'm taking precautions. The community purpose discussion.
Yeah, so
you're gonna lead that, right?
Sure, I will, but I'll need your help as well. So, there's sort of 2 purposes for this next agenda item. I think the important one is to, know and understand why you're all here. And so I thought we could have more of an open discussion on kind of, what we see the advisory committee's role. And then I guess more specifically on the second page, on our letterhead, that, it says in the first paragraph, the purpose of the committee. So I thought we could also take some time to break that down a bit and possibly, even edit it as needed. I don't know if people had time to do that yet or not. I know it can be cumbersome to try to do it in a group process. I tend to believe email you, send back comments, and then we'll address them at the next meeting. But maybe for today, we can talk a little bit about the purposes of the committee and, maybe what the roles are going to be. And I'll add to that this is a work in progress, right? I mean, this document has 6 bullet points, and they're pretty general. And so I think there's some flexibility that needs to be driven by all of you on, what this committee's role is and what what we want to do. So.
And the reason why we started by committing something to paper is that I personally prefer this way of working, because I'd rather look at something that's been written and say, oh, we can edit it, we can add this, subtract it. Then starting from scratch, it's really difficult in a group to start from scratch. So it's a draft, it's a proposal, and we can amend it as we see fit.
Sounds good. Would it be helpful if I just hit the highlights of this letter really quick? I'm not going to read it. I know everyone can read, but just.
Well, let's focus on the purpose first.
Okay.
And I think also one of the things we need to tackle is ways of working. So we've mentioned that all the documents pertaining to the river are on the town website and accessible to everyone. We're thinking also of creating either a Dropbox or a box or some kind of shared drive for the committee so that you can access those documents. There will be on the website as well, but some people prefer accessing a shared drive. Ways of communicating, having a one emailing list. My preference is that when you request documents or you want to learn about something, that it's sent to Forrest and Maggie, and that the response comes to everyone, because it's important that everybody gets the same information at the same time. There's no competition amongst members. We're all on the same team. So these are the few things we've been just thinking about, but we'll welcome your suggestions and so what do you need?
Yeah, so the purpose as I see it, and again, I'm just one of the consultants helping out. We'd love to hear from some of you. Is LLA, listen, learn, and advise. And we obviously are in phase 1 here. I think our levels of knowledge on the river and the watershed are probably all different. So, the more we can all get on the same page, and that will make us a more effective committee, and we'll be able to advise all that more. So I guess I'll maybe just spin it out to if anyone has any questions or comments kind of on the purpose as it's written here, or even more general is fine as well. Does anyone have a thought to share? Yeah, Deb.
I don't know whether it's a thought, it's a question, because that's the same thing. The first part of it, when I read this several times over, I took 2 things away from that statement of purpose. One was, if I'm right or wrong, you have to let me know, to design a community engagement process, the best way to present known data or no data, to get people's questions, concerns, and beyond those 2 things, find some way to engage people in dialogue, not speech making, but actual dialogue, and whether that involves a large number of small groups or some of the techniques that Heart and Soul have used with entire towns and then breaking them into smaller groups. That was the first thing that I saw, and that seemed pretty obvious, but there are lots of subparts of that. And a critical part for me is finding ways to make people comfortable sharing their concerns, thoughts, and questions. And then the second part was probably just as obvious. Although I wasn't quite sure what you meant by due diligence process. I know what that is normally, but to advance, does that mean to present viable options? And if so, to whom? Is that part of the community engagement process? Is that the kind of thing that comes from sharing knowledge in the room, looking at the articles on the website, and then looking at your gap analysis, and then getting, maybe as a start, this group to figure out, well, what questions do we have? You know, what are the questions that we don't find answered anywhere in all of this, just as a starting point. So that's a longer speech than I intended to make.
Yeah.
That was my understanding of what you intended.
Excellent input, and everything sounds accurate as far as I think. Sophie,
Yeah, no, I like this. I like this very much. I think also we're hoping that you're a representative sample. And so that the questions you have are the questions that most people in Camden to start, we need to start in Camden, but then expand to the watershed will have. So we're really counting on you to help us turn every stone possible so that as we start engaging in the implementation of the grant and start thinking about different steps that will be taken to manage the river, that we have done our due diligence, make sure that we have not left any stone unturned, any question unasked. There's no stupid questions. The only stupid question there is the one people are afraid to ask. So I really want this to be an engaging conversation and questioning ourselves and trying to understand, why are we doing this? What is the end result we want to achieve? Why do we want this end result? So it's a critical role that you have to help us really making sure that we do right by the citizens of Camden and by the river.
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, I think, a big thing I've seen is there's a lot of trying to figure out what the objective of the town is, and I think I've always said that, objective of this whole process is to make the river and watershed better. But I use that's a really general term because I think everyone can probably agree with that. But I think what better looks like is very different to a lot of different people. And understanding, I think, those bullets that some people are interested in flooding, some people are interested in fish passage, some people are interested in just the aesthetics. I think understanding all those, and then it's hard because those are going to have different weights for everyone that's going to review this. But I think it's good to identify at least what all those are.
Yeah.
And then, at some point, the town, whether it's through a vote or through committees, are going to need to figure out what the priorities are in those, and how many of those can you achieve and how well can you achieve them. Because it's going to be balanced. I think probably it's a very long list and it's going to be tricky to achieve every single one of those bullets 100%.
Yeah, it's not an easy task we have,
Right.
but that's why it's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, question on, in here as far as providing recommendations to the select board. As a member of the select board, do you envision sort of a deadline or a far out, can you give us an idea of how long you think this process should take?
I can add a thought while Sophie ponders that. It's as long as it needs to, and I guess I'll say that by when the committee feels comfortable that we've gathered enough information and heard from enough experts and had different viewpoints that we feel comfortable, that you feel comfortable.
And do you see that being, we come up with, I'll say, use the word answers, I don't mean that, but we have all the answers as a full presentation, or do you see it piecemeal, different steps along the way?
Yeah, I would think steps along the way
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this, by the way, we worked on this project, and I think if some of you follow the select board, which I hope you all do, because it's the best show in town.
Better than the school board?
It's a toss.
A friend of mine watched it and she said, "You're the original Parks and Recs." So I think we're the best show in town. So, good. Anyway, we started working on this project. I started working on this before we received the NISWIF grant. And so I think we need to rethink a little bit more the engagement of the advisory committee and the synchronization with the grant, because it's actually, this grant is giving the committee some legs, because we have some money to spend to understand how to better, with quotes, the river, as Tyler says, and it's going to be in chunks and in different steps. So once we get, as far as said, once we get to a level where we're confident that we understand the issues and that you understand the issue, that you are willing to make a recommendation, and we should move forward. But these two processes are going to be in lockstep.
A question for the FB people. Your experience in working with other towns or groups on a project, either like or somewhat like this. The people I keep wondering about are the people who aren't currently part of the conversation, who aren't engaged in the issue. So the question for you all is, what have you been able to do to reach out to and draw those people into the community discussion?
That's great. Maggie's an expert on this.
That's why I was looking at her.
Sure, yeah, I can take that on. And, you know, the timeline conversations, you know, I was thinking about when you're asking about viable options, and then Ray brought it up just to sort of to go back to that. You know, to me, making sure you recognize the constraints with the grants and all the different projects that might be providing funding, but also as a committee, kind of seeing the whole picture and thinking about, you know, kind of creating your own sustainability with keeping this committee alive. Because we started out with like the seed funding for 3 meetings, and now there's this greater NIPWIF grant, which is great. So that's going to bring this committee through a few more years, but these processes can take a really long time. And so kind of as a group, to me, thinking about how to keep this sustainable is really an important part of the process. And to get back to, yeah, your question about like underserved communities, underinvolved communities. Yeah, I think getting groups like this and having everyone contribute is one of the best first steps, in my opinion, because you all have access to different parts of the community. One thing we've had success with is kind of as a group identifying town leaders. So not part of town staff, but maybe religious leaders or leaders of ATV clubs, fishing clubs, watershed associations, like all these different kind of groups, and having specific people to kind of send information through that has access to this, to a different group that we all in this room might not have direct access to ourselves. That's really helped in communities where often there's like a portion of town that's really involved, like a geographic portion. And so if you get a few leaders in a different part of the community to help you disseminate information, I think thinking when you talk about designing community engagement, thinking really critically about physically where we're holding events, and is everywhere represented, and is access, equitable, and going to kind of draw out people that maybe otherwise wouldn't come, like maybe wouldn't come to a meeting in a town space, but if we have a meeting, at a park and they're part of the watershed. Anyone else have any ideas? Those are kind of the things that come to mind for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, those are great. And, part of, I guess, what we'd like to design with you, in the not too distant future are some of these outreach pieces. And, the what, when, I mean, we think the committee, this is a major role for the committee, is to help and design these and set these up. So, and I know we have people from schools and many different cross sections there. So yeah, engaging the schools are very important as well.
Yeah, may I add something? You're ambassadors. So by being part of this committee, it's also, people will know it's public, your names are public, you are ambassadors. And I encourage you to help us engage in conversations with neighbors, with friends. So what is this advisory committee doing? Well, we just met. I mean, be also part of the communication, because I think people are curious. I'm stuck on the street all the time. People want to know, they're curious about the data loggers. When are we going to see data? What's the next step? When is the advisory committee meeting? So you're also part of this. And I think one of the big issues that I feel that the advisory committee is here to help us is communicating and making sure that the citizens of Camden, who will have to vote eventually on this, have the information they need to make an informed decision. That is critical, that people can read an article or paper or talk to any one of you and say, these are the issues we're working on. They're complicated, they're complex. I was listening to NPR this morning, and there was a segment on the river restoration project out west. And the woman was saying, yes, it took us 10 years to restore 4 miles of river. So this is the pace we're going with. You know, it's a long, complicated process. We need everybody to get on board and to understand why, what, when, how, and answer their questions as much as we can. Richard, you seem very inquisitive, like, why am I here? Go for it.
I make eye contact, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Sure.
Does the select board have a pulse already on what the town of Camden and then the general population wants in regard to the dam? And they know that there are certainly people on both sides for various reasons. Have you done any survey or assessment on sort of where the townspeople are leaning, which would kind of help us?
The select board? No.
Okay.
No, and so that's, you know,
Part
of the problem.
Okay, yeah.
And part of the problem, part of the process to really understand where people are at. And I think it's really difficult to ask people to vote on something when they don't have the information. They need to make that decision. So we really need to.
Looking at the assessment that was done in terms of like how the flooding will be in the future, it may be helpful to have some sort of version of what that looks like for the town in 10 or 15 or 20 years. If you keep the dam, what does that look like? What does it look like your business is flooded? Does it look much like it has up until now? Is it going to be sort of a non-issue, or will it, you know, get worse and worse over time based on that information that's already been gathered? That might.
Yeah.
And I will have to add that Montgomery Dam, I do not think is the key worry for the town as far as flooding.
Absolutely.
I think the Knox Mill, the Knowlton Street Dam, and I'll call a bunch of things underneath where the Camden Deli, the cafe, the Bagel Cafe is located, is a more obvious place where you're going to have tree limbs collecting in any kind of a big storm to cause flooding.
But there's different, I mean, it's one of those things too, where you have to figure out, there's a lot of different modes of flooding too. There's flooding that happens right now as a result of direct discharge into the ocean. And there's the flooding you're talking about. It's hard because there's also the arguments that the dams also help flooding events downstream.
Yeah.
And then there's the catastrophic flooding, which is if the Seabright Dam fails, 100%.
That's it. Yeah.
Then that's a whole different type of flood. Yeah.
But this is great.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we need to understand.
Right. Yeah, but I think flooding's a great term that's been, it's thrown around a lot, like, and it's used by some people say, let's get rid of the dam because it gets rid of flooding, and then other people say, well, let's keep the dam because it gets, so it's like, I know, it's like.
Right. And you know, we'll talk more as time goes on, but you know, there are also stormwater issues related to the flooding, and that's, you know, something we've also noticed early on. I mean, you have, you know, a lot of what we call impervious area, so you have a lot of water every time you guys have a thunderstorm or a rainstorm here going in many different directions, and that needs to be looked at as well as far as exacerbating flooding, so over time. So,
I was just going back to the purpose statement.
Been waiting a long time.
It was interesting to me to have us, I think, identify that maybe we're an education, that's my comfort zone, right? A body that is going to be taking information to our citizens. And I'm just curious about tweaking this one part. Provided due diligence process to advance viable options. I'm wondering if that's what we're doing, or if we're, or at least in the beginning where we are now, are we simply taking information to people? Not saying this is an option, but this is the information you need to see what the options mean. You see that little, it's not so much saying this is a package deal of an option, but this is the information we know about flooding, this is the information we know about this dam, that dam, the other dam. Anyway, I see that as a little bit of a difference from presenting viable options.
yeah, maybe, I mean, does the town have a vision? I mean, what they're looking for the committee along those lines? I mean, as far as process, or is that?
I think it's a fair question, so, and I haven't thought about it. Can I get back? Yeah. No, because it's critical. I think I need to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think it's better, I mean, I tend to think that it's better that, so due diligence process is data collection, analysis, and recommendations based on that data, information, and analysis. And recommendations can be, there can be a suite of recommendations. I think in the first, I think the first step we need to do is, why are we looking at this river? What is the purpose of this work that we're doing? It's not just about the Montgomery Dam. It's not just about flooding. It's not just about fish ladders or fish passages. It's not about removing dams that have, exhausted their usefulness in terms of industrial or commercial purposes. It's really a vision for the river. What is it that we as citizens of Camden want to do with this river, and also other people on the watershed? So why is it critical that in 2022, the town of Camden decides to apply for a grant, get a grant, and look at this river? Why? I have my answer, but I'm curious about yours. And that's also what we need to grapple with, because, human beings, we are hardwired to solve problems. Immediately, that's what we want to do. I want a solution. But what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I think we first need to define this problem. And maybe we have not done a good job in the town at saying, there's a problem. So what are we trying to solve? So maybe that's the first task of this advisory committee. Okay.
I think the problem is that it's a jam. There is fish passage whether we like it or not. There is drought low flow and flood flow, and it's just, it's really, it's how good do we want it to be? And I would say that there's a bit of a responsibility to the downstream side, which is Penobscot Bay, and the algae blooms in August in Penobscot Bay are a new phenomenon. They're inshore in West Penobscot Bay. It's a bummer. It comes from, effluent and just low dissolved oxygen in shore, and pollution of all types, like man-made and dust and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a big problem when you have something so good and you want to improve it. You want to advance it. I think the language is good. I think the language is clear. We have to advance viable options, things that really can be done for sustainability and resiliency outcomes. I mean, that's a lofty goal. A resiliency outcome is a very kind of forward idea. That's a goal. A resiliency outcome does not mean necessarily more dams like we conceive of them to manage the river. It's less of that, more of the goal. So I'm not the expert on what the goal is, but I think about healthy rivers that I like to keep up on in my old life in Western Washington. And you can go onto the US Geological Survey all the time and check out river flows and check out dissolved oxygen and kind of like check in on old friends and just think that like still really working well. And of course, that's just missing for the Megunticook River at the moment, albeit a very small stream.
Thank you.
To pick up on that, the term resiliency has been bouncing around in books and common conversation for almost a decade now. It's the first book I read on it. And some of the language that I've seen in what the select board has put out and what is here, wouldn't it be helpful to specify what that would look like? In other words, if we were resilient, what would it look like? We don't know whether we have a problem until we can imagine a resilient river. And we might find, maybe what you're saying is that we're resilient right now. But if we're gonna use value language like that, or goal language like that, it always helps me to have some picture in mind of the kinds of things, because that's how you figure out what you're gonna need to do, if you're not already, to get there. And then the second thought was, having heard you, I thought it would be interesting, to me anyway, to know what all of the task group members think the problem is that's being solved.
Oh, yeah.
To get back to your question, so, because we all have probably some idea of what it is, why the town would engage in this, either picked up from the town's own language or our own observations. So at some point, I think it would be interesting and helpful
Yes.
to have those of us in the room say, A, if we think there is a problem or something worth doing, and what that is.
That'd be great.
On the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, no,
Yes, not now.
it's a great idea, and, you know, we had talked about doing some visioning exercises as part of this as well. We're already starting to do it, so I think it'll go
It's
well.
5.
Yes, it's
I'm
5.
not doing my job.
No, you are, because the next agenda item is now.
Oh, it's now. But keep those thoughts alive. This is great. All right, so you guys need to select the vice chair. So
Talk about the thought process.
So I'm the non-voting chair of this committee, which is what a board liaison usually does. So I set up the agenda and make sure that the discussion is flowing correctly. I can clarify some issues on the role of the town as the management and operation. So Audra and her team, what they do, I can clarify the role of the select board in what our role is, but and I can help move the conversation along, but I'm not going to vote on any resolution recommendation you may have, because that's not possible for me to do. I work with Forrest and Maggie to set up the agenda, but I think it would be very useful for you to elect a vice chair who would work with me and Forrest and Maggie to set up the agenda, to make sure that, you know, if there's some issues that you see you want to share with the vice chair that can communicate with us, or whichever way, I think it would give a nice balance to the committee without being over bureaucratic. But it will also give representation to one of you. So it's up to you. You can say yes, you can say no, you can decide to table it, you can, it's, you know, we're creating this committee together.
It certainly makes sense. It might be hard to do at this moment with having just met one another. Unless somebody has some very clear interest in doing it, but. Yeah, I mean, just because I can look at this list of expertise that everybody has, but whether you would make a great vice chair or not feels like a possibly difficult decision in this moment.
Could it be a rotating thing at first, where
That's
someone just
yeah.
takes it on,
Sure.
tries it out, and the next person can take it on, and then, you know, we could evolve over time, and if someone says, actually, I enjoy doing it, or,
You just passed a torch to somebody.
yeah. I mean, because then
We can
nobody
put an
seems to
alpha
be-
order. No, whichever,
Schedule resignations.
what did you say?
No, just like we just schedule, like, I'll do it for the next 3 months and then I'm done.
That would be-
Whichever way you feel comfortable with, really.
Yeah, and as we move through the public engagement process too, like how we interface with the public might be, you know, could be a big role. I would think that person could take on, so. I've seen communities like do exactly that, take turns, because that can be a lot. Just for that
Yes.
piece of the project.
Yes, I think it's a fair, but so for now, we want to table this until you get to know each other better.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take on whatever responsibility is required of that person as sort of a getting started, but yeah, I think it'd be difficult to determine who the best fit is until.
And honestly, I don't have a sense of what this person's would be doing.
Yeah.
Is this, it sounds like it would be a point person or conduit between the select board and this committee. But to what would be the function that you wouldn't already be serving?
So we traditionally, I think in the way the town sets committees, the committees elect their chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Mhm.
the format we're accustomed to dealing with, but we don't, number one, we don't need to do it. If there's no value in it and it's only a burden, there's no point in doing it. But if you feel at one point that it's really necessary to have this one person representing the committee and having this dialogue with me or Maggie and Forrest, it's an option that's open to you guys. But there's no, the absence of a vice chair does not void the work of the committee.
Yeah, I think, and I know Ray's got a comment too. I think I'll just add really quickly, what he gives is, we're consultants. Sophie is non-voting, represents the town, and brings a citizen into that, agenda setting kind of guidance process.
I think that's what I was gonna bring up about the agenda setting. I believe in some of the material I read here is that the idea was to have the non-voting chair and the vice chair set the agenda. And really, the vice chair would be the non-select board member of this group who would help to set the agenda. And I'm not sure, as far as setting the agenda, I think we as a group should be saying, this is what we want to have on the agenda for next time. And not just have two people sitting aside and saying, this is what we're going to talk about next week.
That's
or next
even,
month.
I mean, to me, it's better. I mean, having as many of you participate and engage and voice what you want is the best solution possible. But sometimes people don't want to do this, it's.
And the other thing, when I say that, about setting the agenda, we don't want the agenda being a scroll.
No. And also the
We can't
agenda,
afford them that long.
the agenda is meant to be like conducive to conversations and to making sure when you say, we need to understand, I don't know, how to exploit the data from the data loggers.
Right.
What does it help us? What kind of decision does it help us to make? And that's what's interesting. It's like really, it has to be substantive conversations. We're not going to go through an agenda and check boxes because, okay, we gave them this piece of paper, they said they received it, check. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Right. So it's really to raise questions, your questions, and for us to address them and say, okay, we understand this question. We know what type of information or expertise we need to bring on board so that they can answer your question. That's really what we need.
Right.
My agenda has no point. It's your agenda that matters.
Just an observation, having worked with groups for a long time, that, and I'm echoing your concern since we don't know each other very much or at all, actually. Sometimes in a group, when it's first starting, if one of the group is taken out, either by their own volunteering or by nomination or something else, it starts to fracture. No, you're not any longer on exactly the same plane. And I think it's going to be critical for this group to stay with equal responsibilities, the same plane. So it's an observation.
May I make a suggestion then for our next meeting, as far as setting the agenda? I think, Sophie, why don't you set it, but if you can send everybody an email with a proposed agenda, and if we feel there's something that we want to add, we respond as giving, let's add this to the agenda or whatever.
I can commit to that.
Yeah, and actually, one better than that, we have 20 minutes at this meeting to start talking about the next agendas. We put extra time in there for that reason, so for the next few meetings, so yeah. We're
Such a
And
good
I think,
deal.
and I think you said we're meeting here for the foreseeable future.
Yes, we decided to have the meetings here because it's more conducive, I think, to like group work than it is in the big French conference room with the board and everything. So the light is so much better. So that's where we're going to be meeting.
Okay, and all these meetings are going to be open to the public.
So the public, our recommendation, and I think we have it in the bylaw, our recommendation, we need to think of the committee more as a task force. We need to get down into really nitty-gritty questions and topics. The public is welcome to attend, but we don't have time for public intervention. So there won't be any public comment parts in this meeting. They can send us emails, they can, react, but we really want the group to work together in the, it's an hour and a half. It's not a long time. So the public will have other occasions and you're here to help us find a way to engage with the public. So let's make sure that we focus on the task at hand, which is big, and find ways to engage the public, but the public will not be making comments here.
The gap analysis on one of these sheets was listed as a topic for the next meeting, the second meeting. Is that still the case? And if so, do we have homework to prepare for that? I mean, those.
No,
are science.
no homework to prepare. There might be homework after that presentation, but again, it's not going to go into great levels of detail with every study that's ever been done, but it's, what it is. So, our plan is to present it for, 20 minutes or something at the next meeting and get your feedback. And, I'm sure there's something we have missed that maybe someone knows. So it's a good chance to kind of get it out there publicly. My first reaction is that there's still a lot we don't know. You've heard me say that already, so.
So maybe we can recommend that if you have not looked on the town website, on the Megunticook River project portion of the town website, that you do so. Because there are lots of documents that have been uploaded of studies that have been done in the past. And that's maybe they need a starting point though. So I would recommend, visiting this, reading some of the reports that have been published. I think we have put the new NIFWIF grant narrative on the town website as well. So acquaint yourself with that. But these are reading recommendations. I mean, at least to start somewhere.
But you're thinking of the 2019 study, the one that was just on the
The
Megunticook
Interfood report is there.
report and the longer 2022 report.
2021, yeah.
2021.
Can I add,
Yeah.
so Restore Megunticook has a website that has tons of information as well.
Yeah.
And we have a whole section on articles that have been written, and, you can, there's been tons, I'm sure everyone's seen, right? So, yeah, I would explore both, the Sabian Falls group, Restore Megunticook group, then other citizens have written in. So it's a good way to get perspective and just to see what how the town is thinking about this. Yeah.
And also, if you come across, you all read newspaper website, if you come across a study or a document that you feel is relevant for us, just bring it to our attention. Or a particular format of a short report or synthesis that you've come across that you like, that you think is really conducive to bringing information, we're takers. We don't have the solutions baked here, right? This is step zero. So every contribution is valued and important to us to create a communication plan, and that's engaging so people can access the information they need. So you're more than welcome to share reports, data of any sort that you think are valuable to all of us.
Are there any good resources that support or speak to those who want to keep the dam? Maybe you would know the answer to that, right? By, sort of a synthesis of that argument. So I would like to be able to understand
There are,
that.
I'd have to look back into
Okay.
it and everything, but I think there are quite a few sources of other examples where dams have been saved. Also, and I'm not sure, I think some of you were at the meeting on Friday that Tony Grassley presented with an architect with a fish ladder proposal that would save the dam in a form. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and that's basically, this was a landscape architect who did all the research and how to be incorporated in there so that I think the citizens can have know that the dam could still stay and have a fish ladder that you're going to need anyways to go up river.
There have also been at least two articles over the last 2 or 3 days in the paper. one of
Yeah,
which had a
I did see
particularly
those.
long
Yeah, that were sort of
Right.
just, I was
discussion about that meeting.
Yeah, I did see that.
Also, the Interfood report too.
I'm sorry.
One person at a time. So Sue?
I was just going to say, the Interfood report also talks about the costs. I mean, it's what, 4 years old? 5 years old?
That's the
Yeah.
2019.
Yes, right. It's, but it has
This is
costs.
21.
No, that's the big one. There's another
There's
one.
another one.
Right, and it has the cost, it shows what would happen if you took down all the dam, Montgomery Dam, partial dam.
Right.
So that's a good.
It's a study on the
it's-
dam.
Yes,
that
I mean,
dam.
it's thick, it's long, yeah.
And
Not as big as that.
No. But-
There will be a quiz.
Forrest, from your work has it been best to address a whole watershed? Or is it better to chunk it up in smaller bits? And I mean, it's a much easier conversation if you just talk about, you start at the bottom and work your way up. I realize there may be larger goals that encompass the whole watershed, but it's easy to get distracted with the minute details of Montgomery Dam if we're trying to look at the whole thing. Is it important to, would it be better to have phase 1 through 4, and phase 1 is, from up to the fire station?
Yeah, so the short answer is yeah. I mean, it's a 30 square mile watershed, and every drop of rain that falls, up in Lincolnville north of the lake, some of that water makes it all the way down. So I think it's important to look at things at the watershed scale. The river itself, 3.5 miles is fairly manageable for the size of a river. I mean, it's not the Penobscot or the Kennebec or the Androscoggin. So I think kind of logistically speaking, you can probably do a lot there. But I say that, but then the area around the Megunticook River is complex and developed. So there's a lot to look at in a small area.
Well, the other question too is, do we deal with sea level rise in the harbor? Because the seawall is connected to the dam. So that's.
Yeah, I think that's all on the table
Yeah,
for discussion topics. Absolutely. Well, just doing it. Courtney was going to mention something too.
I just had Tony Grassi's printout. If anybody missed the meeting or just didn't get one, I grabbed a bunch for everybody.
Great.
So
Are
pass them around.
the
I'll just
schematics?
pass them around and take what
Yeah, I
you
think
want.
Yeah, I think it's
Schematics
Yeah.
are in there.
Yeah.
As part of that. Okay, good. Well, I think, Sophie, for the last 15, 17 minutes,
Yep.
we had two sort of things. We were gonna try to get a schedule that works for everybody, which I know is not easy for these meetings. And then, talk a little bit with whatever time we have left about the next few agenda items.
Yep.
I guess I will take the lead a little bit on the, I'm not sure what the answer is here, so we're looking to you. You guys have busy schedules. We had talked about maybe having meetings every 3 weeks to begin, which, that means it's not a set date every month. Just, it's gonna take some time as we are today to get organized and kind of, get the train on the tracks, and then maybe monthly after that. Do we want to just try to set the next 2 meetings at this point? And I know I've heard from some of you. I think there's one person has a conflict generally on Tuesdays, so that's tough, and Thursdays aren't as good for you. But it doesn't have to be a Tuesday or a Thursday. We just wanted to schedule this first meeting and
Get going.
get going.
Are
Yeah.
we thinking
So
in the same time span, 10 to 5, 4 to 5:30?
I think so. If this works for everybody, we've always had really good success.
Later.
It's you get home for dinner, and it's kind of at the end of your your work day for many people. So if this works,
I would just put in a vote if there's any will to go later. I would be leaving work less in the lunch. That's
Later, what time?
later, like even a half an hour later.
So 4:30.
Yeah, something like 4:30 to 6 would be just sweetness.
does anyone have a day of the week that's just out? I mean, I know.
This could get really fun. I'm sure if we all went around.
I know.
Like a
An executive decision here.
an oral doodle poll, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think Tuesday works.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, but Tuesdays you can run into possibly a select board
Right.
meeting.
Well, good, so that gives us a firm end time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I have an issue on some Tuesdays where I have the Berry Spring trustees meeting once a month on Tuesdays. So
Oh, so once a month on Tuesday, so we can, okay.
it depends on which usually the second Tuesday of the month. Well, as president, I guess I could change that.
Yeah. So yeah, this
Has to be some advantage.
This is a little bit of a painful process, but we really do want to get full attendance at these
Yes.
meetings if possible, so.
I do have a trip from the 1st to the 9th of October, so that's my thing.
So in 3 weeks,
3 weeks it would
I'm
be,
not
3
sure
weeks
what-
would be, oh, look at that. Perfect.
3 weeks would be the 11th.
But I can't write it.
Yeah, that works.
It is a Tuesday.
Can anyone not do the 11th at 4:30? Let's try it that way.
Well, that would be when I would usually have a board meeting, but if everybody else is okay with that date, I'll try to figure some other way around that.
Is it possible that Wednesdays? are
Wednesdays, we
okay?
could do Wednesday, does Wednesday?
Wednesdays are harder.
Harder, okay.
Wednesdays, that's
Oh, yeah, it's
both school boards,
School
Oh.
starts, okay.
but
Alright,
Tuesday.
it's just my problem.
Does Tuesday work for everybody else?
Yeah,
I have a little bit of a conflict, but I realize if it's only once a month, I can.
It's every 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's do
Yeah.
Tuesday, October 11th.
Right.
So 10, 11 at 4:30, and then 3 weeks from
In
that,
I
November
don't know
1st,
right now,
November
that's my
1st.
problem.
November 1st.
And the 8th is election day.
Yeah.
That's not-
Okay, so 4:30 to 6 on
November 1st.
October 11th and November 1st.
I'm sorry, it's on my email that I can't access from my phone, but
Oh.
I may have just agreed to another meeting at the same exact time, but if it's don't hold it up on my account,
Can we confirm November 1st, but then bring calendars with us?
I'm sorry.
Confirm that with you?
Yes,
October 11th.
October 11th is not working for you.
I don't know if it
You don't
does or
know.
doesn't, because I haven't written it in here, because we went through this exact process that hasn't been resolved yet.
Do you know if that mysterious meeting might be at the same time?
I think it is.
Okay.
Anyway, but that, again, I'm sorry.
So, no, but that's important. So should we look at, so Wednesday doesn't work, and how are Thursdays? Are Thursdays better than Tuesdays?
At least that one.
it's better that one is.
That one is the 13th?
Tuesdays are just prime for me, it gets harder and harder.
Okay, so does Thursday, October 13th, 4:30 PM to 6 PM work?
Sorry, do you
That's
think
for
that
me.
But
No,
can
I
you,
think Seth was saying
harder or better?
Tuesdays are prime.
Tuesdays are good.
That's good.
Wednesdays and Thursdays are just.
okay, sorry.
So Tuesdays are best for you. Right.
Tuesdays are
It's
better.
gone tragically.
Let's
Sunday,
maybe we
Is
should
Monday
try to
out?
stick-
Would it
Well,
that
because
be-
Monday is Indigenous Peoples' Day,
Oh,
at the
okay.
end of October, which I'm happy to have you volunteer that day, it comes double.
Well, do we want to try sticking with the 11th and the 1st?
Yeah.
Richard, are you gonna do that?
If I'll submit my comments in writing. How about that? I'm joking. Sorry, yeah. Let's go with that.
We have an attorney on this.
Yeah. I'll just be meeting with them.
Or do you want to do the 18th? Just make it 4 weeks. If,
This one time.
this one time.
That works for me.
I think it was really nice, it would be really nice if everybody can.
It's like a long
commit-
time though.
It does seem like a long
Yes.
time.
Well, if he can give us more information to read.
or
Well, we'll have more time for the gap
Next time.
analysis.
Right, more time for
Maggie's
gap
like, yeah,
analysis.
good. Next
Does that
week.
interfere with your schedule?
No. Tuesday, the 18th is fine.
I could do the 4th also, we could do the 4th also, but that's less time for the gap analysis. We've already started.
So
If the 11th doesn't work, let's do either the 4th or the 18th. Let's be,
I don't know if we'll be ready for the 4th.
okay.
Okay.
I think that would be. might be
Tuesday, the
pushing it.
18th at 4:30 here.
That works.
that's what.
Works for everyone,
Okay,
but
so,
back to back November 1st, so we get back.
so the 18th and we'll stick with November 1st?
Yes,
There you go.
is that okay?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah?
well, good. Good job, team. So for, just to kind of, so we talked about some upcoming meeting agenda items, the gap analysis, we've talked about a lot, so that will be probably the a main item or the main item for the 18th. We also, as I told the select board, public process, starting to design the public input, public process. We want to try to start tackling that, I think, sooner rather than later. So maybe 2 meetings out for that. The visioning session, that might need to be out a little bit, where we talked about the, problem identification and perception that Deb mentioned. That might be good, kind of after the gap analysis sometime, so you'll have at least that information presented and more time to read. And then I also mentioned, and again, we look to you for this as much as us, but presentations from the outside and starting to maybe line up some key presentations. Maybe some of them are addressing some of the gaps, key issues.
Presentations to us or to the community?
I think initially, I guess I was thinking of presentations to this committee. So we as a committee want to gather more information about this topic. We really want to know, how the alewives would do in the Megunticook or total, out of the blue, but that kind of topic, or, whatever it might be.
So if we're not going to talk about the gap analysis until the 18th, to Ray's point, I think, can you send it to us as if we were going to meet the week before? So that we have more time, you have less time to do it, but we have more time to think about it.
That's a very good suggestion. You were going to do it on the 11th.
Yeah.
You just lost it. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Now you still are.
that's all right.
Yes, you are. You don't have to change your due date.
Yeah, what do you think?
Sorry, I was,
Sorry,
I was asking Audra about the owl.
Can we send a memo on the gap analysis on October 11th so that the committee has a chance to?
I
spend a
think
week
it makes
with
sense.
Okay.
To review
Yeah,
it
I
before
was
the
thinking that
18th,
too.
And in terms of public engagement, think about events you have attended in the past that you felt were engaging, you like the format, the speakers, whatever, made you say, oh, this was such a cool event. I wish the town would do the same about the river. That's the homework. And it doesn't have to be related to town or conservation or fish or whatever. It can be anything. We need to take, inspiration from innovative places and formats and make them engaging.
That's great.
Would this be something to which you'd invite the entire town?
We need to think about public engagement.
I know, but I mean, it's not just how to do
Not
it,
just for you. I mean,
but I mean, how to arrange it so that we could gather as many people as possible. Is that our homework assignment?
No, I think,
no, my homework assignment is, have you been to, let's say you were at a Museum of Fine Arts in Boston and you saw that speaker and she came and she gave you, I don't know, clay, and while she was speaking, she asked you to do something different, something that jogged your brain and said, wow, this was such a cool experience that I wish the town of Camden would do the same about the river. And it can be anything that you have attended. It could be a CLE meeting that finally, continuing legal education, sorry.
No, I was with you.
No, but something that really inspired you, you remember things, you've learned things, you talk to people about it, saying, this is the type of event we should be attending more often. So think about it.
Regardless of how large that was.
Yes.
Did you see the one in Thomaston that was done yesterday on the green? Where they engaged? No?
I was driving back from Philadelphia, so,
So it's written up in Village Soup. But they
okay,
talked about, what are we gonna do with the village green?
right,
Village green or the space for the prisoners. And they had people come and they had boards set up and they had them write down their vision
Yeah.
of what it would be. Something like that
Yeah.
makes sense to me. What is the vision?
That's the kind of thing that Heart and Soul does.
I know, I'm a big fan of Heart and Soul. And but I think that needs to be at the town level.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So we do have a member of this committee, excuse me for interrupting, but we do have a member of this committee who lead a kayak ride down the river.
yeah.
Wow.
We could just walk down the middle.
Right now, you're right.
And I don't know if you actually are soliciting this now or just say, be prepared to discuss this
Yes.
next time.
But you have time, go for it.
Okay. I'm actually just popped into my head an event that I attended across the way there, like 2006 or 7. where when the Brookings Institute was pulling together the data for its publication, that Charting Maine's Future, they went to, I want to say, 8 communities throughout the state and just held scoping meetings. It was just, they turned a microphone on, little 5 to 10 minute introduction, and just let people talk. And if our function here is, one of them, the charges is to build a record so that whatever the town eventually decides, we can point back and say, this is the evidence. Then maybe that's a part of our charge, where we're basically just at one point going to open the microphones up so people can come forth. Where we don't say anything that day, maybe that's just one of our meetings or a supplement to our regular meeting schedule. But, you know, we can do it right across the way in the Opera House.
That would be a great way to get people's questions, not just their opinions, but their questions.
I think one issue that this committee and you see at the town level is the people that are active and engaged, they show up to things, and it's really that other 80–90% of the folks. And probably, I mean, what I would probably suggest is it'd be good for us to find all the butters of the whole river. We should have that whole address list. I mean, that's your first people that are affected by whatever's happening in the river. Granted, yeah, everyone's affected by it, but those are the ones that's in their backyard. And I think, unfortunately, the town or this committee will have to actively go out, whether it's sending something to them because it comes in the mail and they have to get it out of their mailbox, or you know, or the I think it's, unfortunately, you have to actively go out and find those people, because you will get a small percentage of people show up to things, but those are the same people that are going on the town website and reading the things. They've read the interfluent things. They've read all the studies, and unfortunately you have the event and it's the same group of people show up again.
Good point.
I don't know, are we sort of getting in the weeds with this? I was just gonna say, I think that you need several different modalities, like not just a microphone, but maybe big sticky notes on the wall so people can write things or whatever. But also something that lasts over time. Talk about accessibility to all sorts of different people. I'm thinking of like commandeering the Pickering room over sets of time for different things where it's up for 5 days or something. The information is available and visible, and people can comment and come in at different times. That kind of thing. I think it's important to have up something that is available to see and hear or whatever over the course of several days, so people have an opportunity to go back, go at different times, whatever.
That's a great idea. I'm gonna give it to Courtney, and then we just 1 minute out.
I just had a suggestion for the agenda next time.
Sure.
The bylaws. Can you go over?
Oh,
that?
right, I forgot to mention that.
What?
Yeah,
The bylaws.
the bylaws,
The
I,
bylaws, yes.
Yeah, great to go over that.
would you like me to email those again? Does
Yes.
everyone?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, I'll email them again, and another topic which I forgot, at some point, we can bring in the data monitors and talk about the data that we've collected, that maybe in November, we can do that.
Yeah.
And you guys can all become experts.
If I can jump in here, one thing about the bylaws is, we have I think, a very good committee of 9 people. And, if someone has to drop off, how do we appoint someone new?
No, you're not dropping off.
No. But, you know,
No, it's-
we're talking about,
Yeah, things happen.
we're talking about a, 2-year or
2 years,
longer commitment,
Yeah.
so,
It's a good, yeah, absolutely.
no, I'm changing the chair right
You know, it took us to create a committees for you to join, Ray. Literally, I've heard the story. So anyway, I think we're gonna close because it's time.
Good.
Thank you so much. This was
now. Nice meeting everybody.
Yeah.
very nice to meet all of
You all.
you. Thank you for your engagement, your ideas. And let's make sure we keep this level of engagement and questions, and let's not be afraid of asking any question we want to ask. That's my gift to you.
Right. There's one other question. Okay, the things that we talk about in here, is that something that we can tell other people we aren't?
Absolutely.
It's on Zoom.
Live streamed on YouTube right now.
Right.
That's a good question.
Good question.
Thank you
Can I
very
ask
much.
a quick question about one of the bylaws that I just need an answer on? It's the part where it's saying no member shall independently research, interview, or investigate matters that fall. It's like, but that's what we're doing. We're all kind of.
But not independently. So bring it to the committee. This
we're
is
doing our
one
own
body.
research in a way, I mean,
But
everyone's.
we can do it on our own, but bring
Do
it.
it on her, but bring it here.
Okay.
You know, what you learn,
Your data.
Yeah, no secret.
no secret
You
data.
don't like keep secrets about saying.
Don't keep
It's just the way
secrets.
it's written, I was like, I know, like, I might, you know, have coffee with somebody, you might tell me something, but I, you know. I don't know, I'm a rule follower. I struggle. So, okay.
No, what we don't want is, we're hoping that, listen, well, I spoke with so-and-so and they think X is the solution, right? So but this is not the point, you know, so I spoke with so-and-so, this is what they think, I'm bringing it to you, so you can all look at it and make your own opinion. I think, really, that's what we're
Okay.
trying to
Well,
define, but.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's good. And we can, I think, you know, we can have at the bylaws next week, so. we
Okay.
can discuss that.
Trying to, you know, had a whole month.
Yes.
Just worry about.
All right.
No coffee.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I don't want.
Thanks for,
Of course, there's,
I joke.
yeah, water monster.
The reason I'm on the school board is.
It's a great. Very good. Not enough staff.